Louie T. Welcome to the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So today I come bearing good news. And we could use a little bit of that after the news yesterday of O-line Bobby Johnson being hired here in Washington as the offensive line coach after leading the Giants to offensive line misery and into the O-line abyss with 85 sacks last season. Now, let me state this and make this abundantly clear. We do not know how O-line Bobby Johnson is going to turn out here in Washington. There is a track record of him being a teacher. He did have a nice little run in Buffalo before going to New York and flaming out miserably. So he has been well respected in the past. Last year was not a good representation of what he's been, but it still exists, and that's something he's going to have to overcome. But I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. We're going to see what happens. It's not a hire that we all are warm and fuzzy about and looking forward to, and that's a big, important hire as an offensive line coach. They need to get that right in order to help facilitate change here in Washington. So all we can do is play the wait and see game, right? I've said this already. Patience and perseverance. That's all we're going to continue, or at least me, I can't speak for you. That's what I'm going to continue to practice and trust the process. Now, with the moves made that we're going to talk about today, I don't have to spin it and try to make it a positive, and I don't have to try to sell you on these being good hires. These are good quality football, high acumen hires, right? Really excited about bringing on one of these coaches in particular at a position of desperate need for good teaching and coaching. And that's what we're going to get with the hire of Ken Norton Jr., who was brought in here to be the linebackers coach. And this is a guy who was an outstanding linebacker in his NFL career, won 3 Super Bowls in a row, 2 with Dallas, and then moved on and won another one the following year with the San Francisco 49ers, went on to be a well-decorated and celebrated linebackers coach, goes to SC, his alma mater, and just turns into a factory, shipping one, first, second round linebacker after another to the league. He then goes on to have a very successful career in the NFL as a linebackers coach, ultimately landing him as a DC. That didn't go as well, but one thing remains constant. This guy knows linebackers, and I'm excited about him joining this staff. We'll talk about that here a little bit more shortly. Also, another name that's going to be joining this staff is one John Pagano. Now, if that name, at least the surname, sounds a little familiar to you, it should. His brother, Chuck Pagano, if you recall, was a longtime NFL head coach, dealt with cancer. That's where we got the Chuck Strong moniker from. Was a longtime defensive coordinator in the league as well. Well respected, and so is his brother, John Pagano, as well. He recently was out of the league, but he's one of those dudes, high football IQ, high football acumen, a guy that's been around the game for ages. His dad is a coach. Those guys are always invaluable when you've got a father who's a coach. It instills a lot of good principles and football properties in you. And then a lot of teams reportedly were interested in adding John Pagano to their staff this coaching cycle. Apparently, teams really sought after his ability to come in. And we see this quite often, you bringing in a guy with a veteran mindset, been around the block a bunch of times, for another set of eyes, a guy that can help you, wrinkle out a few or iron out a few wrinkles here and there. And so a senior defensive assistant, it seems like more likely than not is a role that he will hold here in Washington. Let's go over and make a few social media maneuvers and talk more about these signings that I am very excited about. So we'll start with Pagano quickly, and then we'll get to the real meat and potatoes of why I'm excited, and that's Ken Norton Jr. But this is from Benjamin Albright, who had this first, who writes, per league source, Former Chargers and Raiders defensive coordinator John Pagano will join the Washington Commanders staff. Pagano, a former Broncos assistant under Vic Fangio, was a hot name this cycle and had multiple teams interested. So he was a longtime outside linebackers coach, most notably under Vic Fangio, but he also had a couple of stints as a defensive coordinator. And all of these guys are kind of intertwined, right? They've crossed paths at some point, may not have been there all together, but they've all, touched bases with one another at some point here or there. So in the case of John Pagano, he crossed paths with our new linebackers coach, Ken Norton Jr., when they were both in, I think they were in Oakland at the time in 2017. Don't think they had made the move to Vegas quite yet. So they were both in Oakland with the Raiders in 2017 when Norton, who was the defensive coordinator at the time in Oakland, got fired. And lo and behold, John Pagano took over as the defensive coordinator on an interim basis for the remainder of that season before that whole staff was wiped out. And John Gruden was then brought in. So those two know each other. Norton is a guy that crossed paths with our head coach Dan Quinn in Seattle. So during Quinn's first stint as a defensive line coach in Seattle in 2010, that's when they first met each other. That was Norton's first year as linebackers coach in Seattle. Quinn would then take a job to be the defensive coordinator and defensive line coach at the University of Florida with the Gators. He would stay there for 2 seasons. He would come back to Seattle this time to be the defensive coordinator, to which his linebacker coach would be Ken Norton Jr. So they would then reunite in Seattle, had a 2-year run there, 13-14. Of course, Quinn gets the job in Atlanta. And so that's their history together. So these 3, guys kind of cross paths. And I think it might have been Norton who may have said, hey, man, I think we should bring in John Pagano. And look, it's a small, tight-knit fraternity. I'd like to think that Dan Quinn has crossed paths with John Pagano in some regard at some point in their careers, even if it's through Chuck, his brother. I'd like to think that they knew each other, but I think, too, Ken Norton had something to do with this. Anyway, it looks like, and we go to Nikki Javala's tweet, John Pagano is joining the Commanders as a senior defensive assistant, source confirmed. So, as Albright mentioned, Pagano had interest from multiple teams. So a lot of teams saw him as a candidate to be a senior defensive assistant, guy that you bring on, again, an extra set of eyes that can help you iron out some things. I don't think we had a lot of these positions. And again, I could be wrong, and I've been wrong. And I said I didn't think we had this coordinator, run game, pass game, all that stuff. And people were like, oh, we actually had this guy doing it and that guy doing it. So it just felt like we didn't have specialized roles, right? Like he's not doing anything else but being a senior defensive assistant. He's not a senior defensive assistant / defensive line coach, right? That's what we've been doing. And I'm not saying that it's impossible to have guys doing multiple things. You look around the league and there are a ton of guys doing 2 things or having, titles that have multiple labels to them. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but I prefer to have guys concentrated on one particular task. I don't want you being spread thin, having to do 2 and 3 and 4 different things. Just want you to focus on that one thing, right? I like that that's what they're doing. We're bringing in guys and having them fill specialized roles. And he's going to come in and be an extra set of eyes, a guy that has seen a lot in this league. And I think he's going to be able to help them, construct this defense from the ground up. We need it. Lord knows we need it. We were the worst defense last year in franchise history from a points given up standpoint. So, boy, do we need to build this thing from the ground, and adding a guy like Chuck Pagano certainly cannot hurt. Now, let's talk about the guy that I'm excited about, Ken Norton Jr. This is a lifer. This is another one of these Jack Del Rio type guys, except he's not calling the plays. We didn't want Del Rio anywhere near calling the plays, and I don't want Ken Norton anywhere near calling the plays. But what I do want is for Ken Norton to do what he's done a lot in this league and everywhere else for that matter. He was doing it at UCLA last year, his alma mater. That's coaching up the linebackers. All right. I think I said USC was his alma mater earlier. I might have said that. That's not his alma mater. He actually went to UCLA and graduated from there, but he went to SC and really made a name for himself. And that's what got him into the league as a linebackers coach, because of the string of success he had at SC, churning out big time linebackers into the NFL. It almost became a pipeline under his leadership at the linebacker position as the coach there. So I'm excited about his ability to teach. And I think that's something you've heard me say multiple times when it comes to the guys that we've seen Dan Quinn hire to this point. A lot of teachers, a lot of guys that have been doing it at a high level, at a specific position. We're not asking them to do, this or that, or, double as this. We're not asking a former defensive back to coach the linebackers. We're not asking a former running back to coach the tight ends. We're asking a former linebacker to coach linebackers, right? We're asking a longtime defensive backs coach to coach the defensive backs. I love it, right? It seems easy. It seems like it's not rocket science, but sometimes I think a lot of these teams and a lot of people around the league make this NFL thing a lot harder than it needs to be. And so Ken Norton Jr. is a guy that we desperately need, because, boy, our linebackers have sucked ass for a very, very long time. Now, it'd help if we'd actually invest resources, real resources, into the position. But even if we get a guy in the 5th, 6th, or 7th round, it'd be nice to coach one of these dudes up and get production like a lot of these teams around the league are getting from their 5th and 6th and 7th and undrafted, linebackers. We can't even get maximum production out of a 1st or a 2nd round linebacker, let alone someone in the 5th or the 6th or the 7th round or undrafted. Well, this is the kind of guy that will help you. Take one of those 3rd round linebackers, a 4th round linebacker, and develop him. Get him to play at a high level in this league. Boy, we could use it. I'm so excited about Ken Norton Jr. He was one, and I'll be honest with you, and I know this is not going to go over well with some of you, but that's fine. He was one of my favorite Cowboys, if you will, back in those days. Obviously, I watched a lot of Cowboys football because when I was growing up, they were really good, and my dad's a Cowboys fan. But one of my favorite lines is when he went to the 49ers. And that's when I think I really started to like him. I didn't really love him in Dallas. I think I really started to take a strong liking to him in San Francisco. They were called a finesse defense in San Francisco. A lot of that was because their offense was so good and people didn't give their defense any respect. And I just remember him, in the locker room after they either won the Super Bowl or were going to the Super Bowl and they had a dominant performance. He said, and they said our defense was finesse, unconscious. Love Ken Norton Jr. Love him being on this staff. Guy's an excellent teacher at a position where we desperately need teaching. I couldn't be more thrilled by this hire. What says you? Leave it down in the comment section. Ken Norton Jr. coming on board as a linebackers coach. John Pagano coming on as a senior defensive assistant. Two good, strong additions to this staff. We're back to business as usual. We had an off day yesterday. Back to business as usual today, adding more valuable assets to this staff. And again, who knows? O-line Bobby Johnson may turn out to be a valuable addition to this staff as well. Again, we'll take a wait and see approach with that. I know a lot of you have already condemned him. Giants fans are laughing at us hysterically. Again, I'm going to take it in stride. It is what it is. But I'm excited about Ken Norton Jr. I'm excited about John Pagano. What says you? Leave it down in the comment section. Can't wait to read your responses. We needed a dub today. Okay, yesterday felt like an L. We needed a dub today. I think we just got it. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. I thank you guys for joining me. You know what this is. Post up. Take command. Until next time. You guys, have a good one. Take care. See you next time.
LouieTeeNetwork.